My name is Caroline Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and I'm the event coordinator who spent 6 months planning every detail of my dream wedding, only to discover 3 days before the ceremony that my sister Jennifer had poured an entire gallon of red paint over my custom-designed wedding gown that had taken 4 months to create and cost $8,000. The gown wasn't just expensive. It was a work of art that had been specifically designed for my body type, my venue aesthetic, and my vision of what I wanted to look like on the most important day of my life. I work as a professional event coordinator, specializing in high-end weddings and corporate galas, which means I understand better than most people exactly what goes into creating a perfect celebration. I've planned over 200 events in the past 7 years, coordinating everything from intimate garden ceremonies to elaborate destination weddings with guest lists exceeding 300 people. My reputation in the industry is built on attention to detail, creative problem-solving, and the ability to anticipate and prevent disasters before they happen. The irony that I couldn't prevent the disaster in my own life, my sister's deliberate destruction of my wedding gown, wasn't lost on me as I stood in my bedroom staring at what had once been an exquisite ivory silk dress, with hand-sewn lace appliques and delicate beading, now completely ruined by bright red paint that had soaked through every layer of fabric and destroyed months of skilled craftsmanship by one of the region's most talented bridal designers. When I confronted Jennifer about what she had done, standing in my bedroom holding pieces of the destroyed gown while tears streamed down my face, she smirked at me with an expression that combined satisfaction and contempt, and she said without any hint of remorse, "You think you're so perfect with your fancy wedding and your perfect life. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to have something ruined." But the moment that truly broke something fundamental in my relationship with my family came when I went to my mother, Patricia, expecting support and outrage at Jennifer's destructive behavior, only to have Patricia defend Jennifer's actions by saying, "You always steal your sister's shine with your accomplishments and your perfect life. Maybe if you weren't so focused on showing off, Jennifer wouldn't feel the need to act out." The suggestion that I had somehow provoked Jennifer into destroying my wedding dress by planning such an extravagant wedding revealed that Patricia would never hold Jennifer accountable for her behavior, no matter how cruel or destructive it became. According to my mother's twisted logic, my success and happiness were provocations that justified Jennifer's sabotage, and I was the one at fault for having accomplishments worth sabotaging. Have you ever had your most important possession deliberately destroyed by a family member who was jealous of your happiness, only to have your own mother defend the destruction as justified retaliation for your success? Because that's when I realized that some families are so toxic and dysfunctional that the only healthy response is complete removal rather than continued attempts to make them see reason. The thing about my family that you need to understand is that Jennifer's destruction of my wedding gown wasn't an isolated incident of bad judgment or emotional overflow. It was the culmination of years of deliberate sabotage targeting my achievements, relationships, and important life events, while Patricia consistently excused and enabled the behavior by blaming me for making Jennifer feel inadequate through my success. Jennifer is 26 years old, works sporadically in retail positions that she quits or gets fired from within months, lives in an apartment that Patricia pays the majority of rent for, and has spent her entire adult life resenting me for having stable employment, healthy relationships, and accomplishments that she interprets as personal attacks designed to make her look bad by comparison. Her jealousy isn't based on anything I've done to her. It's rooted in her inability to accept that people's lives develop differently, and that my success isn't caused by her failures or designed to hurt her. The pattern of sabotage started when we were teenagers and has escalated throughout our 20s as the gap between our life trajectories became more obvious. When I was 17 and preparing for my high school senior prom, I had saved money from my part-time job to purchase a beautiful dress that I had been planning my entire look around for months. The week before prom, I discovered that Jennifer had taken scissors to the dress and cut it into pieces, claiming that I was showing off by planning to wear something so nice when she wasn't attending prom herself. Patricia's response to that incident set the template for how she would handle every future episode of Jennifer's destructive behavior. She blamed me for being insensitive by having a nice dress when Jennifer was going through a difficult time, not having a date to her own junior prom, and she suggested that I should have been more considerate of Jennifer's feelings by choosing a less elaborate outfit that wouldn't make her feel bad about not attending a formal event. When I graduated as valedictorian from high school and was preparing to give the graduation speech in front of hundreds of people, Jennifer spread rumors to several classmates that I had plagiarized my speech from online sources. The accusation was completely false and easily disproven, but it created drama and stress during what should have been a celebration of academic achievement. Patricia's response was to tell me I should understand why Jennifer feels threatened by my academic success and that I should be more humble about my accomplishments so Jennifer wouldn't feel overshadowed. The sabotage continued through college, where Jennifer would call me during exam periods claiming various emergencies that required my immediate attention, pulling me away from studying and creating stress and distraction during critical academic times. When I expressed frustration about the pattern of convenient crises that always seemed to occur during my important academic periods, Patricia accused me of being selfish and suggested that Jennifer's emotional needs were more important than my exam preparation. When I graduated from college and landed my first position as an assistant event coordinator at a prestigious event planning company, Jennifer showed up uninvited to my celebration dinner and caused a scene by loudly complaining that the family was making too big a deal about my new job when she was also working hard at her retail position. Patricia sided with Jennifer, suggesting that we should tone down the celebration to avoid making Jennifer feel inadequate about her own employment situation. The pattern escalated as I built my career and my personal life, while Jennifer remained stuck in cycles of short-term employment, failed relationships, and general dissatisfaction with her circumstances that she consistently blamed on external factors rather than examining her own choices and behaviors. Every promotion I received, every successful event I coordinated, every positive development in my life was treated by Jennifer as a personal affront designed to make her feel bad. And Patricia consistently supported this interpretation by suggesting I should be more sensitive to how my success affected Jennifer's self-esteem. When I got engaged to Daniel, a wonderful man I had been dating for 3 years, who worked as an architect, and who treated me with genuine love and respect, Jennifer's jealousy reached new levels of destructiveness. She tried to convince me that Daniel was cheating on me by fabricating text messages and creating elaborate lies about seeing him with other women. When her lies were exposed and I confronted her about trying to sabotage my relationship, Patricia defended Jennifer by saying she was just trying to protect me and that I was being too harsh by expecting an apology for attempts to destroy my engagement. Have you ever watched a family member repeatedly sabotage your happiness while your mother defends every destructive action by blaming you for being too successful? Because that's the dynamic that led to Jennifer destroying my wedding gown, and Patricia claiming I deserved it for stealing Jennifer's shine. The wedding planning process itself became another battleground where Jennifer's jealousy manifested in increasingly concerning ways that should have warned me she was capable of major sabotage. When Daniel and I got engaged, we immediately began planning the kind of wedding that reflected both my professional expertise as an event coordinator and our vision for celebrating our commitment with the people we loved most. As someone who coordinates high-end events professionally, I understood exactly what I wanted for my own wedding: an elegant garden ceremony at a historic estate, a reception under twinkling lights with farm-to-table cuisine, live music from a jazz trio, and floral arrangements featuring seasonal blooms in soft romantic colors. The guest list was approximately 150 people, including family, close friends, professional colleagues, and Daniel's extended family who were traveling from across the country to celebrate with us. I had selected every detail personally, from the custom-designed invitations to the menu tasting to the signature cocktails that would be served during cocktail hour. But the element I had invested the most time, emotion, and financial resources into was my wedding gown, which I had commissioned from Rebecca Walsh, one of the most talented bridal designers in the region whose work I had admired for years through her designs for my clients' weddings. Rebecca and I had spent months collaborating on a gown that would be unique to me, not something from a standard collection, but a completely custom creation designed specifically for my body, my style preferences, and my wedding aesthetic. The dress featured ivory silk charmeuse as the base fabric, with French lace overlays that Rebecca had sourced from a specialty supplier in Europe, and delicate beading along the bodice that she had hand-sewn herself using vintage techniques that required hundreds of hours of meticulous work. The design process involved multiple fittings over 4 months as Rebecca constructed the gown, ensuring that every element fit perfectly and that the finished dress would be not just beautiful, but also comfortable enough for me to wear through an entire evening of celebrating. The final cost was $8,000, which was significant but reasonable given the custom nature of the work and the quality of materials and craftsmanship involved. Throughout the wedding planning process, Jennifer inserted herself into every detail she could access, offering unwanted opinions, criticizing my choices, and generally trying to undermine my excitement about the celebration. When I shared photos of the venue during the planning stages, Jennifer commented that it looked pretentious and suggested I was showing off by choosing such an elaborate location. When I discussed the menu options with family, she claimed the farm-to-table concept was trendy and stupid, and that I was trying too hard to be fancy. Patricia consistently defended Jennifer's negative commentary as just her being honest, and suggested I was too sensitive about criticism when I expressed hurt that my sister couldn't be supportive during my wedding planning. She actively encouraged Jennifer's involvement in my planning by asking me to include her in decisions and to value her input, despite the pattern of negativity and undermining. The bridal party dynamics were particularly difficult because Patricia insisted that I make Jennifer a bridesmaid, despite my reservations about her participation given her history of sabotaging my important events. When I attempted to explain my concerns to Patricia, she accused me of being petty and holding grudges over past misunderstandings that I should have forgiven and moved beyond. Against my better judgment, I included Jennifer as a bridesmaid, hoping that perhaps her involvement in the wedding would make her feel included and reduce her resentment about my upcoming marriage. My maid of honor was my best friend Sarah, a woman I had known since college who understood the family dynamics and who had witnessed firsthand multiple incidents of Jennifer's destructive behavior over the years. Sarah repeatedly warned me that including Jennifer in the wedding party was risky given her history, but I felt trapped between my desire to have a drama-free wedding and Patricia's insistence that excluding Jennifer would create even more family conflict. The compromise of including Jennifer as a bridesmaid while keeping Sarah as maid of honor seemed like the path of least resistance. As the wedding date approached, Jennifer's behavior became increasingly erratic and concerning. She missed several bridesmaid events claiming various emergencies or conflicts. She made negative comments about my dress during the fittings she did attend, and she repeatedly suggested to other bridesmaids that I was being bridezilla, about details that I was actually quite flexible about as long as the overall vision remained intact. 3 weeks before the wedding, Jennifer called me crying and claiming that she couldn't afford the bridesmaid dress I had selected, despite the fact that I had specifically chosen a reasonably priced option and had offered months earlier to help with costs if anyone in the bridal party needed financial assistance. Patricia immediately called me to demand that I do something about Jennifer's financial stress, suggesting I should either pay for her dress entirely or choose a different dress that was cheaper, despite the fact that everyone else had already purchased the selected style. I ended up paying for Jennifer's bridesmaid dress to avoid continued drama, even though I knew she could afford it herself if she prioritized the expense over other spending, and even though the request felt like another manipulation designed to create conflict during my wedding planning. Sarah warned me that Jennifer was testing boundaries, and that the dress issue was likely a preview of bigger problems to come. Have you ever included someone in your wedding party out of family obligation despite knowing they would probably cause problems, and then watched your worst fears come true in ways you couldn't have imagined? Because that's exactly what happened when Jennifer destroyed my wedding gown 3 days before I was supposed to walk down the aisle wearing it. The destruction of my wedding gown happened on a Wednesday afternoon, just 3 days before my Saturday ceremony, during a time when I thought all the major planning stress was behind me, and that the final days before the wedding would be focused on final preparations and enjoying the anticipation of marrying Daniel. I had taken the afternoon off work to handle some last-minute wedding errands, and when I returned home around 4 p.m., I discovered that someone had been in my apartment despite the fact that I lived alone and kept my doors locked. My first thought was that I had been burglarized, and I felt a surge of panic thinking about potential theft of wedding-related items or personal belongings that would need to be replaced before Saturday. But as I walked through my apartment checking what was missing or disturbed, I realized that nothing appeared to be stolen. Instead, whoever had been in my home had gone directly to my bedroom closet where my wedding gown was hanging in its protective garment bag. When I unzipped the garment bag and saw what had been done to my dress, I actually gasped out loud and felt my legs go weak beneath me. Someone had poured what appeared to be an entire gallon of bright red paint over the gown, soaking through the protective bag and completely saturating every layer of the ivory silk and delicate lace that Rebecca had spent months creating. The paint had dripped onto the floor of my closet, creating a pool of red that looked like a crime scene, and the smell of the paint was overwhelming in the enclosed space. I pulled the dress out of the closet with shaking hands, hoping that maybe the damage was limited to the outer layers and that Rebecca might be able to salvage something from the destroyed gown. But as I examined the extent of the destruction, I realized that every single layer of fabric was soaked through with paint, that the delicate beading was covered and ruined, and that the dress was completely beyond repair or salvaging. I stood in my bedroom holding pieces of the destroyed dress, crying and trying to understand who would do something so deliberately cruel and destructive just days before my wedding. My mind immediately went to Jennifer, but I tried to convince myself that even she wouldn't go this far, that there must be some other explanation for what had happened. Then I noticed my bedroom window was slightly open, and I realized that Jennifer had a key to my apartment that I had given her months ago, during a time when I was out of town and needed someone to water my plants. I had never asked for the key back because I hadn't imagined she would use it to break into my home and destroy my most important possession. I called Jennifer immediately, my voice shaking with emotion, as I asked her if she had been in my apartment and if she knew anything about what had happened to my wedding dress. Her response removed any doubt about who was responsible. She laughed, not a nervous laugh or an uncomfortable laugh, but a genuine amused laugh as if my devastation was entertaining rather than heartbreaking. "You think you're so perfect with your expensive custom gown and your perfect wedding," Jennifer said, her voice combining satisfaction and contempt in equal measure. "Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to have something you care about ruined. You've been rubbing your perfect life in my face for years, and I'm sick of watching you get everything you want while I struggle with everything." Her admission that she had deliberately destroyed my wedding dress out of jealousy, just 3 days before my wedding when there was no possibility of getting a replacement gown made in time, was so shocking and cruel that I couldn't even form words to respond. I hung up the phone and immediately called Patricia, expecting that surely my mother would be outraged by Jennifer's actions and would help me figure out what to do about both the destroyed dress and Jennifer's confession of deliberate sabotage. Patricia's response to my tearful explanation of what Jennifer had done was the moment when I finally understood that my mother would never hold Jennifer accountable for her behavior, no matter how destructive or cruel it became. Instead of expressing horror at Jennifer's actions or offering support during my crisis, Patricia defended Jennifer's destruction of my wedding gown as understandable retaliation for my supposedly insensitive behavior. "Caroline, you always steal your sister's shine with your accomplishments and your perfect life," Patricia said, her tone suggesting that I was the one being unreasonable by being upset about my destroyed wedding gown. "Jennifer has been struggling with her self-esteem for years while watching you succeed at everything. Maybe if you weren't so focused on planning such an extravagant wedding and showing off how perfect your life is, Jennifer wouldn't feel the need to act out." The suggestion that I had provoked Jennifer into destroying my wedding dress by planning a nice wedding and having a successful life revealed that Patricia's enabling of Jennifer's behavior had reached truly toxic levels where she was willing to blame me for being the victim of deliberate sabotage. According to my mother's logic, my happiness and success were provocations that justified Jennifer's destructive actions, and I should have been more considerate of Jennifer's feelings by having a less nice wedding that wouldn't make her feel bad about her own life. "She destroyed my wedding gown 3 days before my wedding," I said, trying to make Patricia understand the severity of what Jennifer had done. This wasn't just mean comments or criticism. This was deliberate destruction of something irreplaceable that took months to create and cost thousands of dollars. How can you possibly defend this? Patricia's response would be the statement that ended our relationship. Maybe you needed to learn that the world doesn't revolve around you and your perfect life. Jennifer was just trying to get your attention and make you understand how your constant success makes other people feel. If you had been more sensitive to her feelings all along, this wouldn't have happened. Have you ever had your mother blame you for being the victim of your sister's deliberate sabotage, suggesting that your success justified the destruction of your most important possession? Because that's when I realized that trying to maintain relationships with toxic family members who would never see reason or justice was destroying my own well-being and happiness. Standing in my bedroom 3 days before my wedding, holding the pieces of my destroyed gown while my mother blamed me for provoking Jennifer into destroying it, I experienced a clarity that comes from finally understanding that some family dynamics are too toxic to be fixed through communication, understanding, or continued attempts to make people see reason. Patricia would never hold Jennifer accountable for her destructive behavior because she had invested years in enabling and defending it, and admitting that Jennifer's actions were wrong would require Patricia to acknowledge her own role in creating a family dynamic where sabotage was excused as justified retaliation for success. I ended the phone call with Patricia without trying to argue further about whose fault the dress destruction was, or whether Jennifer's behavior was acceptable, because I understood that no amount of explanation would make her see that defending deliberate sabotage was enabling abuse rather than protecting a struggling child. Instead, I made several decisions about how I would respond to Jennifer's destruction and Patricia's defense of it, decisions that would permanently alter our family relationships and demonstrate that I was done accepting toxic behavior from people who should have supported me during important life events. The first decision was that I would not hide what Jennifer had done or protect her from social consequences by keeping the destruction private and handling it quietly within the family. For years, I had minimized Jennifer's sabotage to avoid creating family drama or making Patricia upset, but that protection had only enabled the behavior to escalate to the point where Jennifer felt comfortable destroying my wedding gown because she knew there would be no real consequences for her actions. I called Sarah immediately after ending the conversation with Patricia, explaining what Jennifer had done and how Patricia had defended it. Sarah had been warning me for years that Jennifer's behavior would eventually escalate to major sabotage if she wasn't held accountable, and she wasn't surprised by what had happened, though she was outraged on my behalf, and immediately offered to help however she could. "We need to make this public," Sarah said firmly, "not to shame Jennifer or get revenge, but because the only way she'll ever face real consequences is if people outside the family know what she did. Your mother will never hold her accountable, and your extended family enables the dynamic by staying quiet about the favoritism. But if this becomes public and Jennifer faces social consequences, maybe she'll finally understand that actions have consequences." Sarah offered to post the story on social media, including photos of the destroyed gown, with a factual account of what had happened, and an announcement that the wedding would need to be postponed while I figured out what to do about the destroyed dress. The post would include Jennifer's name and her admission that she destroyed the gown deliberately, as well as Patricia's response defending Jennifer's actions as justified retaliation for my success. I agreed to let Sarah post the story because I was done protecting people who had proven they would destroy my happiness out of jealousy while facing no consequences for their behavior. I provided Sarah with photos of the destroyed gown and a written account of what Jennifer had said when I confronted her, and what Patricia had said when I called looking for support. Have you ever decided to stop protecting toxic family members from social consequences and instead expose their behavior publicly so they would finally face accountability? Because that decision to let Sarah post the story online triggered a chain of events that I couldn't have anticipated and that completely transformed how my wedding would be remembered. Sarah posted the story on her Facebook and Instagram accounts late Wednesday evening, just hours after I had discovered the destroyed gown. Her post included multiple photos showing the beautiful dress before the destruction, images from my fittings with Rebecca where you could see the exquisite detail and craftsmanship, and then photos of the dress covered in red paint, completely ruined beyond any possibility of repair or cleaning. The post explained the situation factually but emotionally. This is Caroline Mitchell's custom wedding gown, created over 4 months by talented designer Rebecca Walsh. 3 days before Caroline's wedding, her sister Jennifer broke into Caroline's apartment and poured a gallon of red paint over this $8,000 dress, destroying it completely. When confronted, Jennifer admitted she did it deliberately because she's jealous of Caroline's happiness and success. When Caroline called her mother Patricia looking for support, Patricia defended Jennifer's destruction by saying Caroline always steals her sister's shine, and that maybe if Caroline wasn't so focused on showing off, Jennifer wouldn't feel the need to act out. This is what family sabotage looks like. This is what happens when jealousy is enabled and defended instead of being addressed and held accountable. Caroline has spent years minimizing her accomplishments and walking on eggshells to avoid making Jennifer feel bad, and this is how her family responded to her trying to have a wedding celebration. If you've ever experienced family members sabotaging your happiness out of jealousy, or if you've watched toxic family dynamics get excused and enabled by parents who refuse to hold destructive children accountable, this story is unfortunately familiar. Caroline deserves better than this, and I'm posting this publicly because silence only protects abusers while making victims feel like they need to hide what happened to them. The post concluded with a request for any recommendations for bridal shops that might have sample gowns available in Caroline's size on extremely short notice, and a statement that the wedding would likely need to be postponed until a replacement gown could be found. Within an hour of Sarah posting the story, it had been shared over 100 times by people outraged by Jennifer's behavior and Patricia's defense of it. Within 3 hours, the shares exceeded 1,000, and the comments were flooding in from strangers expressing support for me and disgust at my family's treatment. By midnight, the post had been shared over 5,000 times and was beginning to appear on wedding-shaming groups, family drama discussion forums, and social media accounts dedicated to discussing toxic family relationships. But the truly unexpected development came Thursday morning, when Sarah's phone started receiving messages from people in the wedding industry who had seen the post and wanted to help. Several bridal shops offered to provide sample gowns at significant discounts if I could find something that fit reasonably well and could be altered quickly. 2 local photographers offered to document my wedding for free after hearing about the family sabotage. A florist offered to provide additional arrangements beyond what I had already ordered as a gift to help make the wedding special, despite Jennifer's attempts to ruin it. Then, around 10 a.m. Thursday morning, Sarah received a message that changed everything about how my wedding would be remembered. The message was from someone named Lauren Bennett, and it took Sarah a moment to realize she was being contacted by the Lauren Bennett, a celebrity wedding dress designer whose gowns had been worn by actresses, musicians, and socialites, whose work had been featured in Vogue and on red carpets, and who commanded prices starting at $50,000 for her custom creations. Lauren's message explained that she had seen the post about my destroyed wedding gown and that she was disgusted by your family's treatment and inspired by your grace in handling this sabotage. She offered to create a replacement gown for me in 48 hours at no cost, using her staff and resources to design and construct a dress that would be even more beautiful than what Jennifer had destroyed. No one should have their wedding sabotaged by jealous family members, Lauren wrote. I've built my business around creating beautiful moments for women on their most important days, and I'm not going to let your sister's cruelty take that away from you. If you can come to my studio in Los Angeles by this afternoon, my team and I will create a gown that will be ready for your Saturday ceremony. Sarah called me immediately to share Lauren's offer, both of us crying at the generosity and struggling to believe that a celebrity designer whose work we had admired for years was offering to create a custom gown in 2 days for free because she had been moved by my story. I called Lauren directly to confirm the offer was real and to express my gratitude for kindness from a stranger that exceeded anything my own family had been willing to provide. Lauren explained that she had been following Sarah's account for months because of wedding industry content Sarah sometimes posted, and when she saw the story about my destroyed gown, she had been so outraged by Jennifer's behavior and Patricia's defense of it that she wanted to do something concrete to help, rather than just expressing sympathy in comments. I've seen too many brides devastated by family drama, and I've never heard of anything as deliberately cruel as destroying a wedding gown 3 days before the ceremony, Lauren said. You deserve to have the wedding you planned, wearing a dress that makes you feel beautiful, without your sister's sabotage defining how you remember this moment. My team and I can make that happen if you're willing to trust me with 48 hours to create something special. Have you ever experienced strangers showing more love, support, and generosity than your own family during your most difficult moments? Because Lauren's offer to create a wedding gown in 2 days represented the beginning of understanding that sometimes the people who care about you most aren't the ones who share your DNA. I flew to Los Angeles Thursday afternoon, accompanied by Sarah and my fiancé Daniel, arriving at Lauren Bennett's design studio in West Hollywood around 5 p.m. The studio was everything I had imagined from seeing photos of her work, a bright, creative space filled with fabrics, design sketches, dress forms, and the organized chaos that comes from brilliant people creating beautiful things under intense deadlines. Lauren greeted me personally, explaining that she had cleared her schedule and assembled her best seamstresses, pattern makers, and design assistants to work through the night creating a gown that would be ready for my Saturday ceremony. She showed me her preliminary sketches based on photos she had seen of my original dress, and based on her own creative vision for what would suit my body type and wedding aesthetic. The design she proposed was stunning, inspired by my original gown, but elevated by Lauren's signature style that combined classic elegance with unexpected modern touches. She explained that we would use silk Duchess satin as the base fabric, because it could be worked quickly while still providing the structure and sheen that would photograph beautifully. The dress would feature Lauren's trademark illusion neckline with delicate hand-applied lace that would take her team all night to complete, but would create the effect of lace floating on my skin. We're going to create something that honors what Rebecca Walsh designed for you while also making it uniquely suited to this moment and this story, Lauren explained, as her team took my measurements and began draping fabric on me to test proportions and silhouettes. The dress Jennifer destroyed was beautiful, but the dress you'll wear on Saturday will represent not just your wedding but also your strength in not letting sabotage steal your joy. The fitting and design process continued until nearly midnight Thursday as Lauren's team worked to perfect the pattern, select the exact fabric and lace, and begin the construction process that would continue through the night and all day Friday. Lauren insisted that I return to my hotel and rest while her team worked, promising that the dress would be ready for a final fitting Friday evening. Meanwhile, the social media post about my destroyed gown had continued going viral, accumulating over 50,000 shares by Thursday night and generating media attention that extended beyond just wedding industry circles. News websites were picking up the story as an example of family sabotage and toxic dynamics. Relationship experts were being interviewed about the psychology of jealous siblings and enabling parents, and the narrative was being framed as a cautionary tale about what happens when destructive behavior is consistently excused rather than addressed. But the most significant development was that Lauren had shared her own post on her social media accounts, which had millions of followers, explaining that she was creating a replacement gown for me and expressing her disgust at how my family had treated me. Lauren's post included her own photos and commentary that brought even more attention to the situation. I've spent my career creating beautiful gowns for women's most important days, but I've never been as motivated as I am right now working through the night to create a dress for Caroline Mitchell, whose sister destroyed her wedding gown 3 days before her ceremony, and whose mother defended the destruction as justified. Caroline's story broke my heart because it represents something I've seen too often in my work. Family members who sabotage happiness out of jealousy instead of celebrating the people they claim to love. I'm honored to be able to help Caroline have the wedding she deserves despite her family's cruelty, and I hope her story inspires other people dealing with toxic family dynamics to understand that they deserve support and celebration rather than sabotage and blame. Lauren's post generated massive attention because of her celebrity status and her millions of followers, turning my story into a major news item that was being discussed on morning shows, in online forums, and across social media platforms. The narrative was being framed as an inspiring story about overcoming family sabotage with the help of kind strangers and professional community support. but it was also generating intense criticism of Jennifer and Patricia for their roles in the situation. Have you ever watched your private family drama become a public news story because someone with a massive platform decided to amplify what happened to you? Because Lauren's involvement transformed my wedding from a family disaster into a story that millions of people were following and supporting. Friday evening, I returned to Lauren's studio for the final fitting of my replacement wedding gown, nervous and excited to see what she and her team had created in less than 48 hours. When Lauren brought out the dress and helped me into it, I actually started crying because the gown was more beautiful than anything I could have imagined, and more perfect for me than even my original custom dress had been. The dress featured the silk Duchess satin Lauren had described, but the construction and design revealed a level of craftsmanship and artistry that exceeded what was typically possible in such a short time frame. The illusion neckline with hand-applied lace created the effect of delicate florals growing up from the bodice onto my shoulders and collarbone, and the way Lauren had cut and draped the fabric made the dress both elegant and modern, in ways that suited my personal style perfectly. "This is the dress you were meant to wear," Sarah said, crying as she watched me standing in front of the mirror in Lauren's studio. "Jennifer tried to destroy your wedding, but instead she created a situation where you're wearing an even more beautiful gown, designed by one of the most celebrated designers in the world. The universe has a sense of justice." Lauren's team made minor alterations to ensure the perfect fit, and by 9 p.m. Friday evening, less than 24 hours before my Saturday ceremony, I had a wedding gown that was ready to be carefully packed and transported to the venue. Lauren refused any payment despite my insistence that I could afford to pay for the materials and labor, explaining that being able to help me overcome Jennifer's sabotage was more rewarding than any amount of money. The attention that Lauren's involvement had brought to my story created additional unexpected support from the wedding industry community. The photographer I had originally hired called to say he was bringing an assistant to ensure every moment was captured beautifully, and that he was donating all the photos to me as a gift. The venue coordinator reached out to say they were providing upgraded decor elements at no additional cost because they wanted my wedding to be special despite the family drama. Even vendors I hadn't hired were offering services. Videographers wanting to document the story, makeup artists offering their services, and florists wanting to add to my arrangements. Saturday morning arrived, and the wedding day that 3 days earlier had seemed impossible was actually happening with more beauty and support than I had originally planned. I got ready, surrounded by Sarah and my bridesmaids, notably excluding Jennifer, who had been removed from the wedding party immediately after destroying my gown. The atmosphere was joyful rather than stressed, and the dress that Lauren had created made me feel like the most beautiful version of myself. The ceremony itself was everything I had envisioned when planning my wedding, but enhanced by the story of how the day had nearly been destroyed, and then saved through the kindness of strangers and the support of community. Daniel and I exchanged our vows, surrounded by 150 guests who understood that they were witnessing not just a wedding, but a statement about refusing to let toxic family members destroy your joy. The reception that followed included a special moment where I publicly thanked Lauren Bennett for her generosity and for creating a gown that had transformed a story of sabotage into a story of community support and resilience. Lauren attended the wedding as my guest, and her presence generated even more media attention as news outlets covered the celebrity designer attending the wedding of a woman whose story had gone viral. Have you ever had your wedding become a public story about overcoming family sabotage, documented by media and celebrated by thousands of strangers who were inspired by your refusal to let toxic people destroy your happiness? Because my wedding became less about the celebration of my marriage and more about the statement that family cruelty doesn't have to define your most important moments. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had family members sabotage your important moments out of jealousy, and had other family members defend the sabotage instead of supporting you, please hit that subscribe button to Sweet Revenge Diaries for more stories about overcoming toxic family dynamics and finding support from unexpected sources. Sometimes the best response to family sabotage is refusing to let them destroy your joy, and sometimes strangers show more love than family ever did. See you in our next story.